Breaking tonight, we continue to follow two big stories, the death of Fidel Castro and Hillary Clinton campaign joining in the recount effort in 3 states. Joining me now with a reaction to both is GOPAC Chairman David Avella. All right, good evening, David. Let's talk about Castro and the two different reactions that we have with respect to his death. One is from President Barack Obama saying basically that history will be the judge of, his legacy, and Donald Trump being a little more blunt about Fidel Castro is dead. What do you think his death is going to mean to the U.S.-Cuba relations?
Well, Donald Trump could have come out and said, one less predator to drain from the swamp. And it will be his economic policies and his efforts diplomatically to help bring prosperity to the Cuban people and hopefully move them closer to a democracy. But look, Judge, it's been a tough month for the Democrats. First, they lose the election, and today they lost their inspirational idol on economic policy with the death of Fidel Castro, so you can understand why they're a little bummed out right now.
Well, you know, he is certainly one who was a brutal dictator, someone who, if anybody remembers the Cuban Missile Crisis. But isn't it true that Fidel Castro has kind of been out of it for a while? His brother Raul is running the place. But when Obama decided to, reinstall relations between the United States and Cuba, he didn't call for the release of any of the prisoners who were being withheld, who were being imprisoned unfairly. What did we get out of that resumption of relations?
Well, those are great questions, and even to your point about we don't really know who has been running Cuba the last couple years, but we have a chance to reset this, and that's why Americans can be optimistic. If you hear what Donald Trump said, you could tell he was very much in line with our past presidents who have been fighting the Castro regime and who understand the strategic importance of Cuba being having good relations and the U.S. having good relations with Cuba, given how close they are to our border. But yet you can't allow a dictator to run the show because you can't count on them. Well, and hopefully we're headed for better times with the passing of Castro and the election of a new president who wants a ally in Cuba, but isn't going to allow a dictator to push us around.
Well, there's no question about that. And, I think that with some of the new additions or the nominations of the Trump team, I mean, tapping General Mike Flynn, national security, and some of the other announcements, Mike Pompeo, CIA, Jeff Sessions, AG. I mean, it's going to be a different game totally. But I want to move along. What's your reaction, David, to the Clinton campaign saying they're now going to join Jill Stein, that 1%er, in the recount? And I got to read this to you. Clinton campaign counsel, I think his name is Elias, said that they didn't find any irregularities in the campaign itself, in the numbers, but they just wanted to be involved just to make sure that everything was pretty much on the up and up. What does that tell you? Why is Hillary getting involved in this recount?
Democrat operatives need jobs. When you have the White House, you have both majorities in the Senate and the House. You have 34 governors. You have 68 of 99 state legislative chambers. There's not a whole lot of place for Democrat operatives to go and find work. So let's try to extend the election a little longer. But to a bigger point, and this is why Donald Trump, as he continues to build his cabinet and do his transition, he needs to set the standards and look for the backgrounds that he wants. He doesn't need to be listening to losing Democrats and media elites who are disingenuous in their advice. Look, nobody had a problem when President Obama elected or nominated a billionaire who had run a company to be Commerce Secretary. Now it's scandalous that Donald Trump's thinking about it. Nobody had a problem when Bill Clinton put Hillary Clinton in charge of the health care system in his first administration. But yet, heaven forbid any member of the Trump family have any advice for the dad. Just as President Kennedy made his brother the attorney general, and yet, Donald Trump gets advice from his son-in-law, and all of a sudden that's grounds for impeachment.
Well,
Donald Trump needs to keep going about doing what he's doing, which is building his team to get focused on his agenda, which is getting the economics of our country in line and keeping Americans safe.
David Avella, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge.
All right. And still ahead tonight, I'll look back at the presidential campaign that made history, Donald Trump's unprecedented run to the White House. But next, the gloves are off. Former Bush advisor Brad Blakeman and syndicated radio host Chris Hahn are on the panel tonight. Hillary's recount effort and life after Castro for Cuba and the U.S. We're talking about it all next. Stay with us.